Boom. And we are live.
Awesome.
Excellent. There's no turning back at this point. You realize that.
I do, I do.
Excellent. We are officially gonna give it a start in about a minute or two. So for the people who are joining right now, hello to everyone. Welcome to this episode 2 of the Startup Kitchen Show. Let us know that you're here with a little comment. Also, I need your help. Let us know how the sound is because sometimes we have a little bit of a technical issue. So I want to confirm that before really diving into the conversation. So for the next 1 or 2 minutes, I'm going to check that everything is live everywhere. Up. There we go. Up. Okay, so we are live here. We are here. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone. We'll give it a start in about a minute or two. Let us know that you're here in the comments. Say hello and let us know if you hear us well, if the sound is good, so that we can give you a great episode today. All right. We live on LinkedIn perfectly. We're live on X. And seems like the YouTube is also running well. There we go. Excellent. All going well. Gonna give it a last call here. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Okay. Seems like everything is running smoothly. So I think we can give it a try. So let me do the little introduction. Welcome, everyone. This is the Startup Kitchen Show episode number 2. And it's me, Riley, and your favorite startup advisor and investor. And today I have a special guest. And I have a special guest because the project that he's building is something I deeply and truly resonate with. But I'm not going to spoil you this entire thing. But just keep that in mind. It's something very special. It's one of those calls that are very, very precious to my heart for those who know my background story. And this is why when I had this conversation, I thought, yeah, I really want to give him access to the platform so he can share a little bit the message. And again, it's a startup, it's a founder. So I want to have this conversation today so that we can share that knowledge as the famous quote, smart people learn from other people. So I want all of us to learn today um, from that story. So without further ado, I would like you to welcome Olafare. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, you are.
Excellent. Welcome to the Startup Kitchen Show. So, for the people who don't know you, because this is broadcasted to my audience, who's Olafare? Can you give us a little bit of your origin story?
Awesome. My name is Olafare Olagbaju. I would like to call myself a systems thinker. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. My background over the years can be put in multiple buckets. I'm an interdisciplinary thinker, and I've worked in agribusiness, financial services, and entrepreneurship. And what I'm doing here in Nigeria is creating a school system that educates successful students.
I love it. I love it.
So that's a bit about me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great. So you dropped the bomb. So you're building an educational project, and as I said, this is something that is very very special to my heart because, well, we all the product of education. I think that's not debatable, right? But I too was born in Africa and I was educated in Europe and I'm now living in North America. And the reason why this was possible to me, the story that I had, the experience that I had, were because I had access to a good education. And so I truly believe that education is fundamental for everyone. And so that's why I really wanted to have a conversation with you today to know more about what you're doing, why you're doing it. So that's it. So tell us a little bit more about um, what was the so in your origin story, what was that made you jump into that particular domain?
For sure, for sure. I would say there are two things. So the first thing is my family background. I come from a family line of educators, and this has been multi-generational. And then the second thing is working with my mom. My mom has worked in education for close to 30 years now, and her career started at the U.S. Consulate General Lagos in the public affairs section, where she advised students. So every day at home, while she was working out, and while she found some time to take a break from work, I would hear her talking to students and parents saying, "What do you want to study and where?" And over the years, for close to 2 decades, I would hear these responses from students. I would hear her responses like, "That's not good enough," or "Tell me more." So, in a way, my upbringing is rooted in the sociology of education. And in trying to figure out my path at this point in time, um, I got to a point where I was like, what's something I know how to do so easily and something I'm so familiar with? And it's education, because I've advised students year in, year out very casually. And, at this point, I'm thinking about taking it seriously. So
Okay, I get that. That's really interesting. So, can you give us a little bit more context? Because there's something I don't know about Nigeria. Well, there's a lot of things I don't know about Nigeria, but I don't know about the educational system and how the society functions around education. So, can you enlighten us a little bit about that?
definitely, definitely. So, when I think about this question and I think about my country, I like to say that Nigeria is a young country. We got our independence from the UK in 1960. And right now, the policy document we use to guide our education system is the National Policy on Education. Um,
Okay.
Over the years, the policy environment has featured a lot of policy borrowing. So, in a public school, for instance, you see, schools borrowing on how the US education system has molded its students, historically how the British system has molded its students. An instance of policy borrowing, I can give you, an overview in the past 20 years. So when Nigeria became a democracy, or held on to its democracy, um, we introduced what is called the 6334 system, where a child does 6 years of primary school, 3 years of junior secondary, 3 years of senior secondary, and then 4 years of university. And then they got to a time where the government was like, let's make our system, more holistic. We're going to think about the parts of our education, and then, also think about what it means to be educated in this country. So we moved to a 934 system, where junior secondary school and primary school were combined. And then there was also the addition of early childhood education as a part of the education system. So technically, it's a 934 system. 934 is accurate as well. And what we're moving to is a 12 system, right? Where it's just 12 years of education, and that's policy borrowing. I believe from the United States. Don't quote me on that. But that's just, our effort to redefine what education is within the country and what the purpose of education is within Nigeria.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. Um, the other thing I'm curious to know is what is what is the social contract in Nigeria regarding education? So I don't know if you understood my question right away, or if I have to sort of dive into
Why don't you dive into it for our audience?
that. Okay, okay. I see what you did there. I like it. So there's this idea that some countries set the vision right away, as in, as a nation, this is what we want to achieve, and in order to be able to do that, we need you to become engineers, doctors, or focus on energy, or we want more this kind of profile because that's what we need to lift the country to the next level. Is there something clear as that in Nigeria?
Yes, there is, and I can provide a historical overview. So in our, I think, let me say, closer to the time where Nigeria was preparing to be its own independent entity, there were many missionary societies within the country. So I think a popular one is called CMS, which is the Church Missionary Society, and then you had, education stemming from the Baptist Church, Methodist, Catholics. So those were our early distinctions. And around the 1950s, we got to a point where the need to be a regional respecting country came to the fore. So in the 1951 Constitution, some people from the three houses of assembly, voted to grant regional autonomy to some areas of the country. And then from there, we became a federal system. So, I mean, from what I know, our education was shaped from missionary societies, including their respective ideals. And then around independence time, there was some leaders that were focused on, okay, so what is the purpose of education, and how can we make education free for all per se? One of such people was Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and he has a famous quote saying that if we don't educate everyone in our society from, regardless of their background, generations from now, we will feel the effects of our mistake. So, I think there are multiple complex issues within our system, but a major tenet of the Nigerian education system is making education accessible for all. And I think more recently, there has been a shift from just attaining general knowledge to gaining a civic education, as the government will call it. So, I think, again, the government is saying, don't ask your government what it can do for you, but what can you do for your government? I think we're at a very critical inflection point.
That's very very interesting. Thank you for all this context. I think it was very very necessary to sort of for this conversation. But for those who are watching us, we'll dive more and more into the startup and business aspect in a couple of minutes. Um, so yeah, very interesting. So Now that we know that, I want to sort of connect a little bit with the entrepreneurship world. I often tell people not to focus on ideas, but problems,
Hmm,
and then evaluate if those problems can be addressed and can be monetized. And so, what is the problem or problems that you've identified that you've identified? Sorry.
for sure. I think I have to provide some context as well to this question. So, in the beginning of this century, and for the last 2 decades, Nigeria's allocation to the education industry, their budget appropriation has been, it was an average of 0.35 to 0.5% of its GDP. Um, and recently, we've increased that appropriation to, I think, a little over 7.6%, which is above the UNESCO guideline. I think the UNESCO guideline argues that developing countries should focus on allocating 3.3 to 4%. And there's a marked distinction between, how much we invest in education within Nigeria and how much our counterparts do. I think the global baseline is about 26%. And that is, something that pundits within Nigeria, education leaders, politicians, parents, all talk about. So setting my response with that context, I will say that, I mean, there's a discrepancy, right? So Nigerians that I've been exposed to, in my almost 33 decades of working in this industry, want a global education, and are really asking, how can I connect my skills and my knowledge to the way the world is moving? Um, so, for instance, I think French is a language that is common in our education system because of our geographic location.
Is it?
Um,
Okay. I didn't know. I know West Africa
it,
for sure, but I didn't know it was touching Nigeria.
Yeah, so we're surrounded by French-speaking countries. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a complex history, but I think a very simple response to what people are looking for is the more, what more can I learn? What more can I do? So people look outside Nigeria. People look for unique education models within Nigeria, with, I would say, different education philosophies. And then now the problem, really, the inflection point I've, kind of been touching on, is that traditional schooling doesn't necessarily mean that you can get a job after university, right? So,
Mm.
for instance, I look at people's profiles a lot on LinkedIn just to see, where they're at. If, young people, old people, and I see chemistry students working in user interface and user experience roles. So, the economy is moving to a place where people are more focused on what you can do, right? And I was also listening to the first episode of the Startup Kitchen show, and something that touches me personally is that the job market deleted, well, I think in the US, 25 to 50 million roles,
Yeah, it's close to
and I
25
think,
million. Yeah, Rachel will correct us, but yeah, I think it's around that.
yeah. So I mean, within country, the economy is changing, and then the world is changing, right? So the problem I'm trying to solve is aligning students' mental models with reality. Um,
Mm.
and I think, in my mind, that's a two-part process. Asking oneself, okay, so what do I care about? What can I do? And how do I connect it to, my career? How do I monetize my skills? Or better said, how can I live a sustainable life from the things I know how to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating because I didn't know what your answers we're going to be, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of discovering and learning from you and through you. And what's very interesting about what you're saying is that I could have probably got a guest from anywhere else in the world, and I'm highly convinced that the answer that you gave would have been really really close to theirs. And what I'm trying to
Mm.
say here is there's a little bit of a um, global situation where um, seems like education, the current way of educating people, is not fully matching the way we live, and the job
Yes.
market is decoupled with what the education is providing. There was a friend of mine posted a picture a long time ago on social media that was showing uh, what what cars used to look like 100 years ago, what computers used to look like 50 years ago, what countrysides used to look like 50 years ago, and what classroom used to look like 50 years ago. The one thing that was the exact same picture was the school classroom.
Mm.
And so there's this thing where uh, 200 years ago, education and schools were out competing everything else, because it was either you go to school, or like, even if and I'm talking about Europe here, you either go to school
Mm.
or you just go work on a farm. And so if you ask the
Hmm.
kids, hey,
Hmm.
would you rather learn stuff or just work on a farm, they'd naturally say, yeah, no, let me go to school, right? But now you asking kids, would you rather go to school and sit on a chair and writing stuff on paper, or would you go to YouTube, video games, smartphones, and all these kind of free and easy dopamine kind of stuff, and all that technology that is out there? And you can see that schools haven't caught up to to the world we're living in. And sometimes it feels like you're going back to the past for an entire day, and then when you leave, there's like this huge dissonance. Is it
Yeah.
is it, I see you smiling, so I'm pretty much depicting the situation in Nigeria as well, right?
Yeah, you are. You are for sure. Um, I think I'm proud that I have like a markedly different education experience. Um, and I mean, I guess that's, part of my family background. Um, but I'll speak more about how I was raised. So, sorry, is there noise in the background, by the way? Just
No, absolutely not. I don't hear anything. Let us know in the comments if you hear anything, but for me, it's great.
Okay, cool. How I was raised. So, in addition to Montessori school, now that I think about it, I was homeschooled in addition. So I say that because where my counterparts, my peers, were taking like additional lessons, so a teacher would come to their home. I was just given books that I would use to place current affairs and current knowledge. I'll find their roots. So, for instance, like let's say Disney makes Hercules. I think in my spare time I would read about Greek mythology, and what that did for me was that I began to ask a question. Okay, so what does this mean for me as a young Nigerian boy? So very early, I was thinking about how my education connected with the real world and what people were doing, outside. So, I think my mom made sure I was homeschooled. On my dad's end, my dad and my grandfather would always buy like Euro Money and Oil Review, Financial Times, and the newspapers. I would just read newspapers. So I was always questioning, like, so what's the point of what I'm learning? And the most, I think what was beneficial for me as well was just being the only student in history in my secondary school. Not many people were interested in it, but I was interested in it because of my that aspect of my upbringing that was homeschooling because it just felt like story time. But what history did for me was pattern recognition. Rise and fall of empires, how governments are structured, social structure, the economy, political science. So, with that background, I began to see that there's a value in the liberal arts. So, I think in order to understand your position in the world and understand your country's position in the world and understand why problems manifest, in the ways they do within your ecosystem, you kind of have to be widely read. So you're less panicky and then more focused on problem solving. Um, and then just to speak on the difference, I think in schools that are not forward thinking, because there are many schools in Nigeria that are forward thinking, it's someone speaking to you in front of the class and you're writing down, you're taking notes, and then you just read the notes after, right? I think the distinction I'm trying to bring into the education market is challenging students from day one, right? And you can challenge students with a question like, what do you think about this subject? Why does it matter? Why are you here? Actually, like, why you left your house? Why are you here? Like, I think those questions are very important. So, the student begins to connect the classroom to the external world. And then if there's anything I didn't touch on, just ask me a question and I can
Oh,
elaborate.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's also a question for our viewers. If you have any questions for our guest today, let us know in the comments. Also, let us know if you hear us well. Um, I want to touch a little bit back into the previous question that I asked, which was what is what are the fundamental problems that you saw in education in the current education system that you think or that you want to address, and then I want to touch upon what is your sort of vision for the educational system.
For sure. Thank you for those questions. So I think, the answer to the first question, um, as a Nigerian, is pretty simple. It's being able to benefit from the outcomes of your education. We live in a time where not many people are able to benefit from educational outcomes, right? You're a stellar first class, graduate, and you're looking for a job. There's so many exceptional people in Nigeria looking for a job, right? Um, and I was talking to someone at the World Bank last year, when I was looking for a job. And, his research focuses on, why people are looking for a job, how that contributes to poverty. And my, knee jerk response is just understanding the social system you're in. Simply looking at a statistic like the percentage of people working in the informal economy versus the formal economy, there's a huge discrepancy there. Nigeria is full of entrepreneurs and small to medium enterprises that are successful in their own right, but you would never hear of them. You would never know them. So my attempts with this social entrepreneurship journey is to create a learning model that connects what you're learning in the classroom to the real world. And I think history is important in this regard because we think about the systems of learning within country. I'll give you the Yoruba and Igbo examples, right? Um, People from Nigeria, correct me if I'm wrong if I'm not sharing accurate information. But from what I know about Yoruba history is that, if someone wants to learn a trade, they would go to someone other than their father. They would go to an uncle and become a student within, a certain craft. The same goes for Igbo people. I think we see it a lot in Lagos today. People leaving the East to come to Nigeria to work in certain markets, learning from their uncles, um,
Mm,
being a student for some years, and then
mm.
establishing a business of their own. In fact, the expansion of this business hinges on those two things for me, because I have to learn from people who are older, than me. So by default, education within our system is quite, it involves people in your family, right? I think
It's
what I'm
tribal. Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. What I'm trying to institute is a system where that is understood, but how can you elevate a student's curiosity to the point where, they know that from a very early age, because the world is changing very quickly. So you might as well just let them know very early, rather than investing in a traditional model where your child is separated from you, and you're giving them to a school to educate. There's a lot that they can learn from their family and the people that are connected to them. I'll give you a case in point. So today, I think a few days ago, I was advising a student on an essay, and I saw that the student was, you're nervous, you're basically crafting an essay about yourself in 250 words. And I was just like, think about, how you were talking to your mom or dad the other day, and then give me just one grand statement from that conversation and make it an essay. And she wrote a fantastic essay, right? And their essay relates to, she wants to study computer science.
Mm.
So, like, there's just value in paying attention to your environment.
This is
Yeah.
super, super interesting. Um, as I said, I also come from Africa, and I know we have a little, like in North Africa, we still have a little bit of that tribe and tribal transmission of knowledge. So that rings a bell to me.
Yeah.
And it it's a good thing for the tradition and the heritage. That absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it creates a problem where then you're stuck in a scope of knowledge.
Mm.
Because as you said, if
Hmm.
you need to go to an uncle to learn a skill, you need to have an uncle that have that skill, right? But the thing
Yeah.
is, the world has changed to the point where there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of new skills required to be able to move
Yeah.
in today's world. And if you
Yeah.
only inherit from people around you, then your scope of possibility uh, is instantly limited because
Yeah.
your grandfathers and grandmothers didn't know advanced statistics or or weaponry or whatever kind of super high end skills, and so then you're locking yourself into this spectrum of possibility, and at the same time, um, you may not be talented. And I'm gonna quote this. I'm gonna put that between quotes, but
Hmm.
you may not be talented for those skills that you have within your family, and so you'll never have a chance to sort of uh, those new skills and move from that. And at the same time, I fully agree with you, and I love this African proverb that says, um, "It takes an entire village to raise a child." And
Yeah.
so it's a collective effort to be able to produce the next generation of people who will carry us forward. So very, very interesting problem, very spot on. And what I want to do right now is dive into the second part of this conversation, that is going to be more around the solutions and your journey into implementing those solutions. But before we dive into that, I have a slightly unrelated question, but it's still part of the thing. This show is called the Startup Kitchen Show, so I need to know what is your favorite dish.
Oh wow. Whew. My favorite meal is probably pounded yam.
Pounded yam.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's my favorite meal. It's a Nigerian dish or Yoruba dish. Well, it's actually a Nigerian dish, I would say. It's made across West Africa. Um, but my
This is where
more,
everyone
you
gets.
know,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I like pizza as well. Yeah, I like pizza as well. So yeah,
Okay, okay, okay. So it's always interesting when people need to share their dishes and they say it's typical for my country, and then you always have other people saying, "No, no, no, we invented it," and blah blah blah.
yeah.
And then there's this, and then it goes sideways. So, yeah, okay. Pounded yam. I never had that. I'm not a very fufu kind of person, but so
Okay.
yeah. So what is so the reason why I'm asking you this is because um, in order to make it, you need a little bit of recipe, and you also probably learn to bake it um, by like talking to other people or on the internet and stuff like that. And so, what I want to do for the second part of this show is I want you to give us your recipe, your startup and your business recipe, so that we can replicate it eventually or learn from you building this project, and so people can learn from that. And if people and our viewers right now, if you have any questions during this session, really don't hesitate. So I want to dive into, you've identified a problem, now you're building the solution. So my first question for you is, can you give us the no more than 1 minute pitch of what you've built and what you're building?
You said more than 1 minute?
No more, no more.
Oh, no more than 1 minute. Okay. So, the vision for Abigail Academy, right, is to create an institution where we educate successful students. Um, that's the vision because over the years, we're exceptional at doing that. Abigail Academy is exceptional at educating successful students. We have done that over the long term. And right now, what do we do every day to ensure that we do this through study, projects, and refinement? So currently, our students study for the SAT, the IGCSE exams, and also in looking at our revenue and cost model as well. I find that a lot of our customers, they're in the UK, Nigeria, the United States, other parts of the world, are interested in the United States. So 50% of our revenue comes from SAT prep. And then the other streams of income are, things like a book club or elocution or just like subject specific courses. Something we're developing now, and this is part of the expansion, are the projects we do. So historically, our projects have been in-house, and now we want our students to build their portfolios. We have in the recent years students who are founders. So the question is, how do we support, a student who has founded a company, and how do we ensure that the school still maintains, high standards in the education that they've paid us to help them with. And then really refinement is just about investing in a student's thinking, making sure that whatever they're working on is relevant to wherever they're from. Um, so I think that's a short version of what we do, and I can go into the details of study, projects, and refinement.
Absolutely. Yes. Slightly more than a minute, but I forgive you that.
Sorry, my bad.
Nah, that's okay. The reason why I like to do this 1 minute elevator pitch is because um, people are not familiar with your project, and so they need like a smooth takeoff to start understanding, as opposed to if we just drop everything. for like 15 minutes, they'll just lose it. So it's like just like when you want to slowly introduce ingredients one by one, so people can get comfortable with the project. And so, let me know if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is Abigail Academy dedicated to helping students of multiple ages, but you have an emphasis on the. Ah, sorry, I'm not from Anglo-Saxon education system, so I forgot the term that you used. The SAT, was it the SAT that you mentioned?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, helping students.
The scholar.
Say that again, please.
Oh, I think I'm coming in slowly. Sorry. I just said it's the Scholastic Aptitude Test,
Okay, Scholastic Aptitude. Yeah, the SAT.
SAT.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So helping students, and so you help in Nigeria, but also in the US and in the UK. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Um, and so now what I want to know is why did you specifically targeted those people in the full pool of students?
Sorry, could you why would you say why are those my clients? Basically?
Yeah, why are those your clients? Why are the ones training for the SAT and not like a younger students or eventually older students?
Okay, so definitely I'll answer that question. So I think this is a function of how the business is structured and then just our reputation. So
Mm-hmm.
prior to my mother starting this business, she had worked at the US Consulate General, and her focus really was advising students across Nigeria on opportunities in the United States, from the best institutions to an institution you identify that is going to be useful on your path. Um, and she also did things like introduce Nigerian universities to US universities so that students leaving Nigeria were able to submit their credentials, and their credentials will be verified by the foreign institution. So she
Mm-hmm.
our bread and butter and our unique value proposition, which we do, you know we're probably some of the best advisors within country, is educational advising to go into university. So with that, we focus on SAT prep, and that's I want to say 50% of the revenue, and we deal with what we term undergraduate fellows, and then the other 50% of the revenue comes from students who are younger than college ready students. So you could be in year seven, dependent on your needs. If you're within the British system and you're going to do the IGCSEs or the A levels, we match you with one of our tutors. But I think the first part of my answer is why we focus on the SAT, and that informs what we're building, what we're building. So we want to approach that more holistically, rather than just like the SAT. Like there's a lot more to someone's learning quotient than just the SAT.
Okay, that's very interesting. So what I'm the interesting thing I'm hearing is that this you didn't create you personally this business, you kind of inherited from your mother. And so that brings the question to why why did you sort of took over this business as opposed to creating a new one? And what were the challenges in sort of that transition?
Yeah. That's a good question. So let me provide more context. So I established the um, Olagbaju Education Foundation. And our bread and butter is research. My background in graduate school was infrastructure, project management, and finance, and within IPMF infrastructure. Um, I really liked social infrastructure, and I think as an infrastructure investor, you know, it's inflation proof. People say because people need those resources. People need roads, hospitals, schools. So that was a general interest for me. And with my systems thinking, what I did was identify a problem in education. And some of that was, you know, the incidence of overqualified graduates. So, I needed a project to work on. So, as part of good business, what we're doing is a business transformation exercise. And this is I want to say succession planning, for a sustainable business. So, what does the future of our business look like? What are some goals that we had at the establishment of the tutoring business? And who is the best person to operationalize that vision? Um, and I am the best person to operationalize that vision of turning a tutoring business that's hybrid into an education institution. So I think that's a full picture of what we're doing. I think as we're expanding, we're focused on the national policy on education because that's what we use in Nigeria, and I strongly believe that our policy on education is good, right? And a bird in hand is worth more than two in the bushes. So as much as I have like such radical ideas on how to um, create a school of the future, I have to ground myself in reality. I think there was this headline I was reading in Tech Cabal yesterday, and it's people talking about there's this business called Alt School Africa, which is a novel and insightful idea, and they teach people about skills they need like coding and that kind of stuff, future stuff. Um, but I think that should just be an aspect of a school, right? That should just be a part of um, an institution, because at the end of the day, an education institution should be focused on teaching people how to think, right? Um, and that's what we do by default. We teach our students how to think, and they've done exceptionally, I think. And then the last thing, a model that we use is, investing in young people. If someone has stellar grades and wants to do a PhD at a top institution, okay, like, can you teach our students? Can you are you good? And some of them have done that, and they've exceeded all expectations and are at some of the best institutions in the world. So we focus heavily on learning by doing and the Socratic method. Um, and we're like, if we're good at this, why don't we do more? So
Mm.
that's what I'm in charge of, the more.
It. I love it. And you naturally transition to my next question by giving us a little bit of a beginning of an answer. And it's what are the mistakes you've made um,
Hmm.
cooking the Abigail Academy that you can share with us?
Wow. I think the biggest mistake, and I think I'm about to make a bold statement. Um, the biggest mistake was my mental model that I had to do a PhD to be successful at transforming the business. Because in the past year, I like this time last year, I was in the trenches of research. just studying global education systems, studying education philosophy, crafting, my story, building out my business plan, and then studying the national policy on education. Um, and then, I had all these materials, but I wasn't doing anything because I was like, let me go research how to solve this problem. So I think I lost time there. And I think it's important, to just execute and do things, talk to people who are like-minded. It was interesting. I got connected to, an entrepreneur in the same industry, right? And then we got to talking, and basically he was asking me to help him with a SWOT analysis, right? And I was like, you don't have a SWOT analysis, like, so it was just like a mirror at on my face, like I just need to get out there, build out this education model, look for partners. So recently, I'm working with an institution, around us, and we're working on getting a physical location, right? So with that, camaraderie will build up. Students will be more confident, and then they can simulate, studying for the SAT and simulate the environment we seek to design. So you just have to start, like, you can't plan the whole time. You have to get out there. So that was my mistake.
Wow. And I have
Yeah.
to say, this is a very, very classic mistake um, most founders make. I made it multiple times, and it's very interesting
Yeah.
because you, above all other people, could have avoided this mistake because in the educational world, you can see kids learning from other kids, and they don't asking themselves, oh, but do I need to own like a degree to be helping my other friends? They don't think that way.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
one step ahead of their friends, and so they using that extra step and transmitting it to the others. And at some point in time, I don't know, where we lose that notion, and we start to think, no, no, I need to be certified, I need a degree X, B, C. But now the reality is, if you have a little bit of knowledge that can be shared with others, then do it. Yeah, I love it. Classic, classic, classic mistake. And it's so funny the way you
Yeah.
realized it with the SWOT story. I love that. Was there any other learnings uh, in your cooking of the recipe of the Abigail Academy you can share with us?
The next one is, I have this professor who teaches infrastructure finance. Um, and he just says, you have to look at the numbers, right? What are the numbers telling you? So I think, of course, when you go out to build a business, or when you start to, like, get active, um, getting a sense of the value of the work you do is so important, because yes, as a founder, you're communicating ideas, you're trying to get buy-in from people around you, but half of the time people are like, okay, like, this person has some, idea, okay, go do it, right? But when you have the numbers and you've analyzed fully your potential, the valuation of your business, you're marking what is bringing you revenue, you're basically creating for yourself goals to pursue. And then you're also creating for yourself an idea of who you are now. Like, what am I doing now that is good? Where do I need to go? And what are the habits that will get me to where I need to be? And really, numbers, combining the numbers and your narrative help you.
Love it. Combining numbers and your narratives will drive you forward. I love this. It reminds me of that quote from Deming, and he used to say, "In God we trust,
Mm.
others bring data." And so a lot of
Mm-hmm,
people
mm-hmm,
navigate
mm-hmm.
without any form of measurement, and it's just finger in the
Mm.
air. It can help when you're cooking, but when you're building a business, you need slightly more than that. Excellent. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that.
that was another mistake I was making with all my research. Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate?
Oh no, I mean it's just simple. I wasn't, modeling out the value of the work that the business was doing. So I wasn't as grounded in reality that as I could have been, but now I am. So it makes you more peaceful. It brings peace, really,
And
yeah, and
that's
clarity.
super super important. Yeah, absolutely. Peace and clarity when you know where you're going, and you have an idea of the potential that you're carrying. It changes everything. It's really a burden to navigate into a world where you're not really sure of what you're doing. It's 100%. Now
Yeah.
that makes me want to rebound on something. How did you get confirmation of the value that you're bringing? How were you able to measure that value?
Mm, that's a good question. So I just answered the numbers, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I did good research, I will say. So as much as I wasted time, it was exceptional stuff, I think. But so I'll preface this answer by saying many thanks to my professors in systems thinking and systems leadership. Um, because with systems thinking, I was able to define the problem that I was trying to solve with heuristics, right? Um, a distinction. How are we different? That's one distinction. Who are the stakeholders in my ecosystem that could help me? And what perspectives am I looking at my problem from? And then I think more to your question about um, more to your question is that I have a vision, mission. I understand my capacity at this time, and I'm constantly learning by asking people questions. And like my vision is broken down into three steps. It's successful students, right? But right now, what does it mean for me to educate? What am I doing? So someone asked me, "Oh, how do I write better essays?" I give them strong and white elements of style. Um, you know, should I start looking for schools? Someone is asking me, of course, what schools do you want to go to? And they already have an answer, right? So a lot of the time, students are just like waiting to like have someone pull stuff out of them. Aligning my mission to my vision and then just breaking things down um, into like step by step goals, automating some of the things that we're working on, um, you know, um, learning how to take on new habits, um, being cognizant of your social relationships. Um, so yeah, just really breaking down, you know, your vision, mission, understanding what you can and cannot do,
Hmm.
and operationalizing, your mental model and then learning from it. And I'll give you a story about how I met you, right? So I was on LinkedIn and I saw this 17-year-old. He's out there, he's, wanting to build websites for Y Combinator founders, and just
Hmm.
startups. And he's just like, you know what, just like contact me, I'll build your website. And I'm just like, oh, this is a project. This is part of my mission. This is someone wanting to do a project. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I do, build out my website. And then, he's like, it's for free. And I give him like 2 months of LinkedIn premium. So, I mean, he can keep expanding his business. He's a founder. And then I see him studying my profile, studying my profile, studying my profile. And, he shared with me his list of schools and he, lists my alma mater as one of the schools he's applying to. Which I was like, that's great. But then I saw that you liked his post of just wanting to do things, getting out there. And you yourself were like, yeah, I'm interested in hearing people's stories. I'm interested in, you know, making sure what someone is doing makes sense. And I was just like, this is great. I should talk to Riley, because he's making time for my development. So basically, all that said, how can you put that in a school, that kind of culture, right?
Mm.
Because ideally, that is what an institution, such institutions should be doing. Like, you need to do things that are real and ideally survive off them, you know.
I love this. I love
But
this.
I think I got
Right
excited
now,
there, so I'll calm down now.
right now, I just want to go back to school. you, you motivated me just
Mm, mm, mm,
to be a student again. It's brilliant. Um, and I love this segment. I'll find a way to clip it because you didn't realize
mm,
it, but you said a lot of the things that I'm telling startup founders. A lot of the things you mentioned
mm,
that apply for your business that you're transmitting to your students is pretty much the same essence information that I share with founders, having a mission, having a vision, uh, understanding your value, understanding your purpose, understanding who you're helping and how you're helping them. And all of that, I'm starting to realize that it's not just business knowledge, it's
mm.
educational, fundamental educational knowledge.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. It's very, very inspiring. Um, I want to sort of pause the discussion for a second because I think we are reaching our peak audience. And so I want to give you a second shot of talking about the Abigail Academy. So if you want to take a minute to say, hey, what's the Abigail Academy? Who is it for? What is it that you do? And give me your pitch again.
Okay. So if you're listening to this picture, unlock because I think I'm warmed up now. But Abigail Academy is an education institution that is designed to enable students achieve their dreams and their purpose. What is our vision in doing that? Our vision is to educate successful students. How do we do that? By focusing on study, projects, and refinement. Study is connecting what you're learning in the classroom to the real world. Projects is operationalizing that knowledge. And refinement is basically refining how you think as a learner. And that is what we do. We're conducting a business transformation exercise and we're connecting students to professionals. So we hope you can join us.
Boom. That's all I can say. That was perfect. Um, I also want to give you a little bit of a place to reach out to potential students or potential educators. So, what can you say to students who may stumble upon a short of this video or something like that? They want to be enrolled in your program, and same thing for educators. So, if you want to talk to students and educators who are out there that want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
I think the first thing you can go to our website. Currently, it's abigailstjohns.org. And then some guiding questions are to ask yourself, who are you and who do you intend to be, right? As a student, is what you're learning in the classroom, you know, aligned with those questions? And as a teacher, are you maximizing the opportunities for your learners to understand themselves and where they're headed? So, those are some things we do simply, and I'd be happy to talk to you if you're interested. And then check out our Academy Launch and Learn.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. We are reaching the end of this show. So thank you very much for sharing with us your journey, what you're building, this inspiring adventure that is the Abigail Academy. I want to give you the final word. So it's really open to you to say whatever you want to say.
Okay. I mean, education is not the, permit me to say this, sexiest industry to work in, right? But I was listening to this South African entrepreneur. His name is Vusi, and he really gave a perspective that changed my thinking and encouraged me on what I was doing, what I'm doing. And he said that Africans need zebras, not so much unicorns. Um, and what that means really is whatever you're doing as an entrepreneur, as an educator, make sure that you are meeting the moment and understanding, who you are and where you are. Um, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, connecting what I'm saying to the digital economy and skills. People know how to think, need to know how to think so that they can leverage those tools. And as a proud Nigerian, right, people who are home to this country, we know where we are, right? We know our potential, but I think there's a lot more to do in investing in our education systems, and just giving people a different perspective on the choices that they make. So, thank you.
Love it. This was the Startup Kitchen Show, episode 2 with Olafare from the Abigail Academy, revitalizing education in Nigeria and inspiring the rest of the Big Rock to do the same. If you liked this episode, let us know with a like or comment, share with your friends. If you didn't like it, share it to your enemies. If you want to get on the podcast with me, reach out to me, send me a message. And if you want to connect with Olafare, you'll have his information on LinkedIn. And for those who are on X, on YouTube, just reach out to me and I'll give you his contact. But you can go to the website of the Abigail Academy. You said it's Abigail Academy St. John.
Abigail St. Johns.org.
Perfect. There you have it. And again, thank you so much for giving us your time today to give us and share us your experience, expertise, and you gave us a little bit of your cooking recipe. Hopefully, this is going to inspire other founders and why not in education to build zebras and not unicorns. That was the Startup Kitchen show. See you on the next one. But until then, boom.